Okay, so understanding the guitar fretboard. First, you sacrifice a goat, or a clip-on tuner. It depends on the tradition. Then you whisper all 5 cage shapes into the sound hole of a martin. You'll be transported deep into a forgotten jungle. You enter the temple of tone, and if you answer the Sphinx's interval questions correctly, she gives you the ancient pentatonic tablets. When assembled correctly, the pentatonic tablets will point you to a desert realm where a man named Dorian is running weekend retreats. There's no food, no water, just 7 tents, one for each mode. In the Mixolydian tent, you unlearn everything you know about 5 chords. In the Phrygian tent, time moves backwards. In the Locrian tent, there is no tent. On the last night, you dream of Triads. They're chasing you through the desert. They know your name, what you were called before you were born. You awake. Suddenly, in your tent, the desert sun is already warming the sand outside, but inside it's cool, quiet, sacred. The air smells like sweat and sage. You blink. You understand the fretboard. You've lived it. The desert breeze picks up. Somewhere in the distance, Dorian laughs. But as you catch your reflection in the pickguard's gloss, you realize you no longer recognize your own reflection. You're never the same. You begin to weep. But the truth is, it's not that complicated if you break it up. And we are. So today we're going to look at the fretboard through 6 levels of increasing difficulty, starting with your good old cowboy chords and ending with modal, triadic, chromatic, motific sequencing or something. Not really. We're not going to go that far. All right, I'm assuming you've already sacrificed your goat, so let's start at the beginning. If you want to explore the fretboard, you should really know your cowboy chords first. So hopefully open C, A, G, E, D aren't any big surprise to you. I will say that those chords, in that order, spell a word, and that word is caged. These are your entry point into understanding how chords and scales are laid out around the neck. The concept itself is really simple. You can use any one of those shapes to play any chord up and down the fretboard. For instance, the C chord played with a C shape would look like this. But if I had my capo on 3rd fret, I could play a C chord with an A shape. And if I had my capo on 5th fret, I could play a C chord with a G shape. Capo 8th fret is E shape. And capo 10th fret, my D shape is a C chord. Now you can put away that big expensive capo, and let's use that big old strong index finger as a capo. You'll notice that this G shape in particular is pretty hard to fret and move up and down the fretboard, but that's okay. That's fine. This is about sacred knowledge, not about comfort. And it's really just a visualization tool. You're not going to be strumming that bad boy, so don't stress about that if you're already stressing about it. You're also probably noticing that you can view the fretboard as 5 separate zones now. That's good. That's useful. Remember that. Every single chord will appear 5 times up and down the fretboard in these different zones, and every single time it'll spell the word caged, but it might be kind of out of order. You can think of the word caged as like a loop, so we might start in the middle of the word. For instance, let's try it with the key of G. G, E, D, back around the loop, C, A. Remember that at the core of what we're doing and what we're going to do through this whole video is we're tracking relationships across the fretboard. In this case, we're tracking 3 notes, the root, the 3rd, and the 5th across the fretboard, and we're using our cage shapes to do that. So practice this for every chord, and then if you want to be an extra big brain, big boy, and think about it real hard, the next thing you might want to do is look at those cage shapes and try to identify which note is where in each shape and track that for every chord as well. For instance, when we did that G shape for the C chord, I have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the root again, the 3rd, and the root on top. Pro tip, if you're in the key of C, your root, 3rd, and 5th are C, E, and G, and you can use your tuner to confirm and memorize all these relationships as you move through your shapes. Then what you do next is you do it for a new chord, and you track out all the cage shapes. Now the note names will be different, but that doesn't matter to us because root, 3rd, and 5th will be in the same place. For instance, right here over the C chord, my G shape started with root, 3, 5. And if I do that over here, once again, I have root, 3, 5. Even though they're different note names, the shape is the same, so the order of the notes that we're tracking is identical. Another way you can level up your practice is by trying to outline chord changes with your cage shapes. Let's say I'm in this zone, sort of the 2nd zone above open, maybe in that like 2 to 5th fret range. And I'm going to map out the chord change, just G, C, and D. How would I play those there? Well, I can play a G with an E shape. My C chord could be an A shape, and my D chord could be a C shape. Remember, there's a difference between the sound of the chord and the shape I'm using. Now you should practice that in all of the different zones. G, C, D. Now, if this is difficult for you and it takes a lot of brain power, then stop here and practice this. But if you're ready to move on, or if you've already learned this lesson from like 200 other YouTube videos, I'll tell you what you can do. First, you want to grab a Martin, and now you want to whisper the 5 cage shapes into the sound hole of your Martin. Now, if the guitar accepts your offering, you'll vanish into the jungle, but remember to say them all in the ancient tongue that only the old ones speak. Oh, it is just like the old lady at the carnival said. Oh, look, there's the tone temple rising out of the jungle mist. And the 5 pentatonic shapes, they're carved into those stone pillars. Oh man, too bad they're in ancient Mayan. And despite my heritage, my translation is rusty. Maybe I can just watch a YouTube video and skip all of this Indiana Jones stuff. Okay, we're moving on from chords to scales now. So before we were using the cage system to track the root, 3rd, and 5th across the fretboard, but now we're going to be using the major pentatonic scale to track the root, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th. We've gone from 3 notes to tracking 5 notes. Now these are the consonant notes. They sound good even if you have no idea what you're doing. So if you're by the Temple of Tone already, you should see a couple of diagrams carved on some stone pillars maybe. Holy crap! How does this guy know where I am? Those 5 shapes that you see have your caged chords built into them. So if you already have your cage shapes memorized, then you already have half of each pentatonic box memorized. 2 notes per string in a pentatonic box. 1 note per string on a cage shape. Let's look at those shapes one by one in the key of G. Box 1 of your major pentatonic pairs with the G shape from the cage system. Here's the chord, and here's the pentatonic scale. Box 2 pairs with the E shape. Here's the chord, here's the pentatonic scale. Box 3 pairs with the D shape. Here's the chord, here's the pentatonic scale. Box 4 pairs with the C shape. Chord, pentatonic scale. Box 5 pairs with the A shape. Chord, pentatonic scale. Okay, so the dude in this YouTube video is saying that we already know half of these shapes from studying the cage system, and these 2 concepts work together, caged chords and pentatonic scales, because the cage system tracks 3 notes, the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, and the pentatonic scale tracks 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So we only need to add a couple notes to each shape to create the scale. Now this is really important. I need you to memorize these 5 boxes, and we're going to be using the method that the ancient keepers of the pentatonic scale have been using for centuries, aka how I used to teach this to little kids. Box 1 is the letter K. It's got a straight line. Only one other shape does that. It's the capital letter of the pentatonic alphabet. Box 2 is the toilet. An enterprising young man once told me box 2 looks like a toilet, and it's been burned in my brain ever since, as it is now seared into your mind. Box 3 is a tree trunk with branches growing off of it. The shape is almost all the same 2 frets. The only exceptions are the branches. Box 4 is the letter N. Remembering this diagonal trend in the shape will help a lot, I promise. Box 5 is a dresser with the drawer pulled out. It's also the only symmetrical shape and the second shape to have a straight line. Now I know what you're thinking. Marcel, this is ridiculous. Why would I do this? But here's the thing. The more ways you have to memorize something, the easier it is to memorize. So you could think of this as an extension of the cage system, where you're adding 1 extra note to each string, or you could think of it as their own scale shapes. Think about those diagrams. Or you could think of it as K, toilet, tree, N, dresser. Or, and least helpful of all, you can think of it as the fret numbers. And the reason why the fret numbers aren't very useful is because as you move this around the fretboard, the numbers are going to be constantly changing if you're in a different key. Does that make sense? So when you practice these shapes, I want you to do it by improvising. Sure, you can practice these scale shapes up and down, but also practice them inside out, backwards. Try randomly wandering through them to make lines. don't just want to know the shapes, you want to know how to navigate them. So practice this on repeat. So now, if you can do that smoothly, you can use the same calculations that you learned from the cage shapes to find pentatonic scales to play over those same chords. I'll show you. You remember earlier we were in the second zone and we found like, hey, G chord in E shape, C chord in A shape, D chord in C shape? Well, the E shape pairs with box 2, so I can play over the G chord like this. And guess what? That A shape pairs with box 5, so I can play over the C chord like this. And lastly, that C shape for the D chord pairs with box 4 of the pentatonic scale, so I could play over the D chord like this. It's all related, man. You can find those relationships all over the fretboard, and it'll allow you to seamlessly play between chords. For instance, here's a G chord. Here's a C chord. Here's a D chord. Back to G, how about? All right, this dude's just flexing now. I got what I need. It's time to enter the tone temple. Okay, so the pentatonic scale got me through the jungle, but now I have to deal with this temple. It smells like the inside of a middle school band room, like the spit valve of a can of Axe body spray. Oh, okay. The writing on the wall says, if the pentatonic scale is the skeleton of the fretboard, then the full major scale is the flesh, moist, pulsing, alive. Whoa, why is this so gross? Wait, okay, these look like the same 5 pentatonic boxes. We might be able to decipher this. Or we could just watch the YouTube guy again. Let's do that. Now we're going to learn the full major scale using a 5-position based system that lines up with your pentatonic scale shapes. So when we did the cage system, we were tracking 3 notes, the root, the third, and the fifth. When we did the pentatonic scale, we were tracking 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Now with the major scale, we just have to add 2 notes again, the fourth and the seventh, bringing our grand total to 7 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now to say it again, each of the 5 positions of the major scale we're learning synchronizes with one of the 5 pentatonic boxes you learned, which, as you know from your jungle adventures, lines up with one of the 5 cage shapes. So it all stacks up like this. Cage shape, G, box 1 of the pentatonic. And finally, we'll learn a major scale that goes there. I almost messed it up. Just like the caged viewpoint and the pentatonic boxes, all of these shapes will be movable as well, so they work for any key. Now here's the secret to turning your pentatonic boxes into major scales. You have to remember that the 4th is a half step above the 3rd, and the 7th is a half step below the root. Now the good news for you is that if you actually went through the hard work of tracking root 3 and 5 through all of those cage shapes, you have the mile markers that will make the major scale exceptionally easy to find. Okay, the 4th is a half step above the 3rd, and the 7th is a half step below the root. Yeah, I can figure that out. Here's the root note, so this is the 2nd, so this must be the 3rd. The 4th is a half step above the 3rd, so here's where the 4th should go. Hey, good job, team, let's keep going. This must be the 5th. It's right after the 4th, so this is the 6th. The 7th is right below the root, and I can't go below open on the G string, so the 7th must be here. Let's keep going. Root, 2, 3, 4 is a half step higher, 5, 6, 7 is right below the root, then root. Wow, let's see if this YouTube video will do the rest of the hard work for us. Now you should be doing all of this hard work yourself, but in case you're stuck in some super gross music-themed temple and you desperately need this information, I'm going to slam through these scale shapes for you. G shape. E shape. D shape. C shape. A shape. Now you don't just want to memorize these scales, you want to really know them. You want to play with them. You want to make music with them. So practice them by improvising. So just pick a shape. For instance, I picked the E shape right here, and I'm just gonna noodle through that scale. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you can connect them, slide between them. So look for these pathways where they might connect. You should have been doing that with your pentatonic scales too, if you didn't do that already. This is the path to true enlightenment. Whoa! That looks like the intervallic sphinx. She's the guardian of the temple. She speaks only in musical riddles. It looks like she's an excuse for a recap right before things get complicated again.
What are the 5 caged shapes?
Do you know what the 5 cage shapes are? Please tell me you know this one. You should be screaming at your screen. It's in the name. Good job! Yeah, that's right. There's C, A, G, E, and T.
How many notes are in a pentatonic scale?
Okay, that's another super easy one. Come on. Pentatonic, pent, like pentagon. I think you got it, but I can't hear you. Say it louder. Say it louder. That's right, 5 notes.
What pentatonic box pairs with the D cage shape?
Okay, I'm not going to help you with this one. You should know this by now. You literally have a 1 in 5 chance of getting it. Okay, you're taking too long. I got this one. It's box 3.
How many notes are in a major scale?
Okay, I'm done with this bit. There's 7 notes in the major scale. Just give me the ancient pentatonic thingy already. Wow. It's like the ancient pentatonic tablets is just a Rubik's Cube for me to solve. What did I say was next in the intro? The desert? Ugh. That's not gonna be fun. Sand is coarse and irritating. I hate sand, and it gets everywhere. Leave it in the comments if you know what movie I just misquoted. This is taking way longer than I thought it would. In real life, this is real Marcel. Okay, whoa. Oh, this must be the desert realm. I wonder what I'm going to learn here.
Welcome to the desert realm. I am your guide, Dorian. The 7 tenths of the modal retreat await you.
Right. Modal retreat.
3 notes per string.
Gross, I got sand in my mouth.
Enter the Ionian tent.
Whoa. I still have signal? That's crazy. Oh, it's a Lessons with Marcel video. Good thing I'm subscribed and I have notifications turned on. Hey folks, I assume you're all in the desert realm. I want to explain what Dorian the sand hippie meant when he said 3 note per string system, or 3 NPS as some nerds call it. So your pentatonic stuff and the major scales that we learned out of the pentatonic boxes, it's all linked to sort of chord shapes and this repeating pattern of 5 shapes across the fretboard. The 3 note per string system doesn't really do that, although it overlaps with that system. This is more about symmetry. You always get 3 notes per string. Doesn't fit into boxes, but it's great for modal thinking and honestly for speed too. For these like scalar kind of runs, it works great. The big change here is that instead of 5 shapes, there are 7 shapes, 1 for each mode. And if you're in the desert realm, 7 tenths, 1 for each mode. So hypothetically, if we're still in the key of G, using the G scale, we can create these 7 modes: G Ionian, A Dorian, B Phrygian, C Lydian, D Mixolydian, E Aeolian, and F sharp Locrian. I'll get to all of that and a little bit more in a second, but why don't you just go into the tent like the sand hippie said. This tent is empty. What's with that? This retreat is a ripoff. So G Ionian is really just fancy music nerd talk for G major. I repeat, G Ionian and the G major scale are the same thing. So if you're wondering why the tent's empty, it's because you already know this stuff. So how we're going to make a 3 note per string scale shape for G Ionian or G major is by finding a G note on our low E string. And every single time we play 3 notes of the scale, we're going to move to the next string. So for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be on the next string. 4, 5, 6, then 7, 1, 2. That's the only really confusing thing, is when you got to pass the seam where it repeats. You'll notice that this kind of overlaps with box 2 and box 3 if we're thinking pentatonic, or the E shape and the D shape if we're thinking caged. All of the 3-note per string scale shapes will overlap like that, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but you know, in your brain, you might think about those 5 stopping points that we had in the pentatonic shapes or the cage shapes as like main stopping points, and the 3-note per string system is like the highway that connects all of them. Anyway, more on that in a second. Let's go to that Aeolian tent. How about? All right, this next thing that I'm going to say is really important, and hopefully it'll clarify this whole modal concept if it doesn't already make sense to you. And how I'm going to say it is that major and minor scales have the exact same notes. For instance, C major contains C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Back to C. A minor contains A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Back to A. They have the exact same notes in the exact same order, just starting at a different point, because everything is a loop. This relationship is called relative major and minor. So C major and A minor are relatives. They're related. Another example would be G major, which is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and E minor, which is E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. Those two are related. Everything's natural except for F, which was sharp. They have the exact same notes, so they're relative major and minor. I bring this up for 2 reasons. One is that this whole time you've been practicing your G major pentatonic scales and your G major scale, you've also been practicing your E minor pentatonic scales and your E minor scales, because they're related. The second reason I bring this up is because Aeolian is really just a fancy music nerd way to say minor. So for our purposes, E minor and E Aeolian are the same thing. So let's use that knowledge to find our E Aeolian 3-note per string scale shape. Okay, so the lowest E note I can find on my E string is my open low E string. So now we're going to start the scale, and every time we play 3 notes of the scale, we're going to switch to the next highest string. Okay, I think I'm getting this. All of these scales will have the same notes as G major, but they'll have different root notes. The same way that E minor has all of the same scale degrees as G major, but it has an E as a root note instead of a G, I think. Now, guitarists are a weird breed, and sometimes they use these modal terms in an odd way. So before we go any further, I do want to clarify something, which is that guitarists will sometimes refer to the scale shape by the mode name, but they don't mean they're playing in that particular mode. Meaning a guitarist will say, hey, let me just play that in A Dorian real quick. They're using the A Dorian scale shape, but they're still playing in G major. In reality, any of these 7 scale shapes could be any of the 7 modes. They all have the same notes. They're all built out of the same materials. What's more important is what the implied root note is, and if the underlying chord structure supports that modal sound. So just because you use the scale shape doesn't mean you're using the mode. Anyway, let's move on to the Lydian tent. Lydian. So a really easy way to classify these modes is by looking at the chord that would be created off of the root note of the mode and asking if it's major or minor. Then we can classify these modes into 2 big categories, major and minor. So our major modes would be Ionian or just normal major, followed by Lydian and Mixolydian. Our minor modes would be Aeolian or just normal minor, as you just learned, and then Dorian and Phrygian. There is Locrian, which has a diminished 1 chord, so it's really not that usable. Like the most nerdy applications, maybe you could use it, but we're not going to talk a lot about it today. It's probably not going to help you. So let's move on to our first interesting mode, which is Lydian. The Lydian scale that is related to G major, aka shares all the same notes as G major, is C Lydian. You'll notice this is just a C major scale with a sharp 4, and that's the defining feature of the Lydian mode. You could take any major scale and turn it into the Lydian mode just by raising the 4th degree. To find our Lydian 3-note per string scale shape, let's find that C on our low E string. Then we're going to play 3 notes of the scale and move on to the next string. Same math. Just as a quick aside, Lydian is very common in film soundtracks and theme songs. So if you're wondering what Lydian sounds like, the classic examples that are normally given are The Simpsons, and Back to the Future. Lydian. Hear it? Okay, get to the next tent. We don't have all day. Mixolydian. So your last major mode is going to be Mixolydian. Remember, so far we had Ionian, which was basically a major scale. We had Lydian, which had a sharp 4. And now Mixolydian has a flat 7. So it's kind of the bluesy mode. We're going to be here forever if we don't start learning these modes faster. So here's D Mixolydian relative to G major in a 3-note per string scale shape. Here we go. Yay. Okay, so now we just need to learn our minor modes and we'll be set. We already learned Aeolian, which was just a normal minor scale, so I guess I'll head to the Dorian tent. Hey, welcome to your second minor mode. Remember, Aeolian was just your normal minor scale. Now we're looking at Dorian. Dorian is a minor scale, but it has a major 6th, meaning you could take any minor scale and turn it into Dorian by raising that 6th from the minor scale up a half step. All right, let's learn our A Dorian scale by finding the A note on our low E string, and we'll do that same math. You might associate the Dorian mode with gypsy jazz. The scale pairs well with the minor 6 chords that are so common in that genre. Anyway, when you're done, move along to the Phrygian tent. Welcome to your final useful mode. This is the Phrygian mode. This mode is known for sounding exotic, and I'm reluctant to say that because it doesn't sound exotic in any meaningful way, just in a way that says lazy film composers would often use a sound like Phrygian to show that a scene takes place somewhere that isn't in the Western world. You know what I mean? It's particularly that flat second degree of the Phrygian mode that's doing all the heavy lifting to sound exotic. Let's learn our B Phrygian scale shape. By the way, if you need help contextualizing the sound of Phrygian, that is what it sounds like in the desert realm. Okay, so I guess on to the Locrian tent, even though they said that one was useless. All right, so you're in the Locrian tent. This is a diminished mode that you're learning, meaning it doesn't really have a stable resolution due to its diminished 1 chord. And that's why I said it's really only useful in like a really nerdy niche context. We're not going to get into all that, but we are interested in learning the 7th modal scale shapes. Let's do that. And I just really want to hammer this home. Any one of these scale shapes could be any one of the modes. Any one of these scale shapes could be Mixolydian, Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, whatever. The only reason we've named them after the modes is because of the notes that these scale shapes start on. It's really more of just like an organizational method of the 3-note per string system, because you could be playing in another mode and just maybe the lowest note isn't your root note. Could be any mode. Hopefully that makes sense. Remember to practice these like all the other scale shapes we talked about. Improvise through them, get creative with them. Now go to sleep. What? I said go to sleep. We'll talk more after you fall asleep. I'm tired. I gotta lay down. Oh, thank God. It was all just a dream. We're afraid it was not a dream. This is the dream. And we are the keepers of the triad, the root, the third, and the fifth. It is time to begin your education. Okay, well, I'm probably just going to watch a Lessons with Marcel video about that. Fine by us. Goodbye, Tarek. That's not my name. Yes, it is. Hey, hello? Yeah, you're dreaming now, aren't you? Well, let's talk about triads before you wake up. Triads are about tracking chord tones across the fretboards, just like the cage shapes, but now we're looking at smaller collections. Specifically, there will be 3 triad shapes, root position, first inversion, second inversion, on each string set, E, A, D, A, D, G, D, G, B, and G, B, E. Let's start with the G chord on our lowest string set. That's E, A, D. Make your G chord, and what do you get? You get this. A G, a B, and a D. That's what we want to see. We want to make sure that the root, the third, and the fifth of the chord are all represented, as in G, B, D. G, A, B, C, D, 1, 3, 5. You get it? If we stay on those same strings, but we move up the neck, we should be able to find the next collection of chord tones. So our G could find a B on the same string, our B could find a D on the same string, and our D could find a G on the same string. Now we're in first inversion, so the notes are in a slightly different order, 3, 5, 1. And if we slide up again, we can find the last arrangement, second inversion, which would be 5, 1, 3, or D, G, B. Let's start again on our next string set. We'll make that G chord. Look at what we get. We have the 3 notes we need. This time we're starting with B, D, and G, so we're already in first inversion. If we slide up on the same strings, we should be able to find those 3 notes again. D, G, B. This time we're in second inversion. And if we slide up one more time, we should be able to find root position. 135 or G, B, D. The next string set is D, G, B. And that's already second inversion of a G triad. So let's move up to find our root position. There it is, 135 for G, B, D. And if we move up one more time, we should be able to find first inversion, and we do. That's B, D, G, or 3, 5, 1. I hope that you can see that this is just a cycle. Every string can only have G, B, and D appear on it once, so we're just tracking where those 3 locations are. Our next string set is our G, B, E string set. The easiest way to make a G triad there is like this. If we move up, we should be able to find second inversion. There it is. If we move up again, we should be able to find root position. 1, 3, 5, G, B, D. Wow, that was easy. I'm not worried about this one at all. Just practice doing that with your major triads, minor triads, augmented triads, and your diminished triads, then you should be all set. What? Damn, I can't do this. Wake me up. Wake me up. Someone wake me up. Please, please. I think I get it now. It's not just about memorizing every system. All these shapes, boxes, diagrams, they're just windows. And windows are great, but they're not the landscape. They're not the shimmer of sunlight kissing your guitar strings at golden hour. They're not the stunned moment of silence after you finish a set and the audience waits to applaud. Some systems will open the right window at the right time, but others will open windows to a brick wall deep in Brooklyn. And that's fine. That's how it works. If you want to understand the fretboard, study the steps in this journey that meant something to you. Let the rest pass. Come back when you need it. And then, and this is the part that no one tells you, you have to walk outside. No diagrams, no neat labels, just music. Let me show you. Wait, where's my reflection? Who am I? Dorian? Get back here. All right, so there's 6 levels of fretboard understanding. Hopefully that helped you figure out sort of where you're at and what's next. You don't have to master this all at once. Just pick one level, get comfortable, and then follow the sacred artifact that you've been gifted to the next location. Of course, there's more bluegrass guitar lessons on this channel. Check out the website for tabs, private lessons, merch, and of course, my signature guitar pick. I think that's all I got, so I'll see you all next time.